Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of AC Discovery, my weekly Saturday show where I run through anime and/or comics. And today's episode continues my watch-along of Death Note, with another 3 episodes this week. We have Execution, Ally, and Matsuda are the 3 episodes that I sat down and watched this week. Where we last left off, basically Light had kind of let himself be imprisoned for a couple weeks. And he went in as Kira, and while he was away, basically freed himself of the Death Note, relinquished it, and so he thereby lost all memories of having been Kira. The first week went by with nobody dying, and then the murders, or 2 weeks went by, nobody died, and then the murders picked back up. Here in this episode, we pick up with 50 days have gone by, the murders have been continuing on consistently, and we see in the beginning of this episode that Rem has basically kind of let somebody be borrowing, I think, one of either Misa's or Light's Death Notes, and they've been acting as Kira, which solves my dilemma that I presented in the last episode of, well, if the people that are dying aren't new people, you know, what's the big deal? These could just be leftover people that Light had triggered, but no, somebody else is playing the role of Kira now, so Light is seemingly in the clear, and continues not really remembering any of this stuff. So this episode kind of has like a big opening sequence about the titular execution of Light and Misa, with Light's father basically taking them in a car and saying he was off to kill them, and then he was going to kill himself, or he was taking them to an execution. They were going to be killed and basically hidden away from the public, and then the plan basically turns where Light's father takes them off into a ditch and says he's going to kill Light and then kill himself out of shame and whatnot for the fear of Light being Kira. But it turns out that was all a test, and it was a blank and whatnot, and they were testing to see if Light or Misa would really kill Light's father to kind of stop it. Neither of them did, because neither of them have any memory of being Kira or second Kira. They still kind of keep everybody under wraps, like Light is still under suspicion for having killed these people, but maybe he was being controlled by the real Kira, is kind of L's going theory, and they still assume that Misa was second Kira, but maybe she was also being controlled by this other, darker mastermind power. So with Light and Misa still kind of technically under suspicion, we have Light and L are going to be basically together. They're going to be working together. L has been building a facility to kind of do all this stuff out of, instead of bouncing around from hotel to hotel. Misa is going to be managed by Matsuda, he's going to be an undercover manager for her, and she's going to go back to her public life, but basically under police detail, because she's still under suspicion as being the second Kira. And then we find out, kind of at the end of this episode, that there's a dark cabal of the Yotsuba group, who's basically kind of, one of them seems to be Kira, and they are using Kira to strengthen their company, and so they're kind of working as a secret society board of directors or something to pick Kira's targets, and then Kira is eliminating them. So definitely a lot happening in this episode, and a lot of transition, and it does seem like, for the time being at least, and this continues on through the next couple episodes I'll be talking about, that Light and Misa are going to continue kind of not remembering that they were Kira or second Kira, not remembering that they had the Death Note at all. So that's an interesting kind of twist on this series. About halfway through the series, I've definitely reached the halfway point of Death Note now. And one of the things I noticed watching these episodes is that, and I don't know if it's, I don't know the animation, mantras well enough or whatever, but it seems like Light and Misa are softer and rounder now that they don't have the memories of being Kira and second Kira. Now they don't have the memories of the Death Note. They seem just kind of like to be even drawn gentler, and not dealing with as many harsh lines and color tones and stuff. So that was like, it's a subtle thing, but it's something that I think kind of I recognized and noticed, at least. If it's there at all, it might just be me projecting that. That's entirely possible as well. But that was so that was Execution. Up next, we continue into Ally, where we get to see kind of everybody going off into this new like situation that Elle has got set up for everybody, the new secret headquarters that everybody will be working out of. Elle and Light are handcuffed together, so they're basically together 24/7. Misa is very much not happy about that because she wants alone time with Light. Light is still pretending to be Misa's boyfriend, and that was something actually that I forgot to mention in the Execution episode, the idea that Elle proposes that Light kind of exploit Misa's affection for him, and Light is super like, I would never do that. That is terribly wrong. I would never be that kind of person. I would never take advantage of her, when obviously we have seen that he would absolutely be that kind of person in different circumstances. So that was an interesting juxtaposition of like post-Ryuk Light and kind of seeing that relationship. But here, continuing on in this episode, he's at least playing boyfriend, not there's a great scene kind of at the beginning of this episode of like a date between Light and Misa, with Elle there handcuffed and Misa not being very happy about it. And it actually leads into a great kind of conflict between Light and Elle, where we get to see them kind of go at it. Light kind of attacks Elle for the way he's being treated, and Elle responds in kind and shows that he can handle himself. He's not just super awkward, nerdy kid who always sits kind of weirdly on the chair and stuff. He is trained. He can fight back. So it was an interesting new kind of dynamic to add into their relationship. We also find out that the Yotsuba group that is kind of controlling Kira now, basically Kira has gone to the police and said, if you stop investigating me, I will assure you that no politicians will die. So they've basically like bribed the police to drop the Kira case. So as a result, any of the police officers that are still assigned to this special unit are going to be dropped. So we have basically Light's father coming back and saying, I resigned, I'm going to do this, I can't follow Kira, I can't try and pursue this Kira case and be a police officer, so I'm just going to not be a police officer anymore. I'm going to devote, all my time to this, which Elle kind of uses as another test of his, where he basically tries to test everybody's loyalty, where he's like, I mean, if you guys aren't part of the police anymore, I really have no use for you. I've done pretty much everything anyway, or me and Light have done pretty much everything anyway, so if you don't have, police resources to offer, you're no good to me. And that gets, we get Aizawa, basically kind of, who's waffling because he's kind of introduced here as having a family that he needs to take care of, and he basically says he can't do it anymore. He can't deal with Elle's tricks anymore, and he quits. But then we get this kind of heartbreaking scene at the end of the episode where he's with his daughter and his wife, and he's basically like so ashamed that he's walked away from it all that he can't even like face his daughter. He kind of breaks down with her in his arms and stuff, and she's trying to figure out what's going on with her dad. We also in this episode have introductions to a couple new members of the team now that they're an off-the-grid team that can kind of deal with the seedier elements. We have the introduction of Aber the con man and Weddy the thief, because why not add a few more weird names into the mix? So it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go, and how they get involved, along with, and I'm sure the conflicts that will arise between the the former police detectives and the criminals. And then lastly today, we have Matsuda, which takes the character of Matsuda, and it basically shows as a focus showcase piece for him, where he's been built up, especially in the last few episodes, as being kind of a punchline and a joke of a detective, and he's really only good for getting Elle coffee and stuff like that. And he's been tasked as basically being Misa's babysitter in his managerial role, acting as her agent and her manager. And so he kind of gets fed up with that, and as they happen to be doing like a movie shoot nearby the Yotsuba building, he goes off and basically takes it upon himself to try and investigate and figure out see if he can figure out what's going on, if he can kind of get any kind of leads for the crew from the inside, basically. Of course, him being Matsuda, he gets caught just as we're kind of juxtaposing this all with scenes of Elle basically getting the team together and saying, here's our plan of action, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to be careful, and if they get any kind of whiff that we're investigating, we'll lose any chance of finding Kira. And as soon as we see that, we see Matsuda leaning up against the door and like falling into the big bad boardroom of the Yotsuba kind of cabal again. But to his credit, Matsuda does a great job of like passing it off and staying undercover and playing the role of the agent and doing everything he needs to do. Ultimately, they get Misa and some of the women from Misa's agency involved to kind of serve as a distraction so that Matsuda can effectively fake his own death to get out of Yotsuba wanting to kill him for fear that he may overheard something or something like that. So ultimately, like, there's definitely kind of movement. Matsuda did overhear Kira and kill as kind of some key words from the board of directors kind of people. It'll be interesting to see Matsuda's role kind of on the team moving forward here, because throughout this entire episode, Elle is frustrated and calling Matsuda an idiot because he's having to clean up, and Matsuda's kind of thrown a wrench in the works. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where things shake out with him with regards to the greater team. Obviously, because his role as the agent now has been blown, so they've got to figure out maybe something else to do with Misa, so we'll see kind of where all that goes. A couple other things that happen in this last episode, Matsuda. You have Yotsuba kind of coming out to want to identify Elle. They reach out to the world's second greatest detective, Araldo Coyle, who we find out from Elle is also Elle. The top 3 detectives in the world, basically, are all Elle in disguise, basically, in case people reach out to one of these other detectives trying to figure out who Elle is. So that was a clever little thing. And they're going to use that fact, and they're going to have Aber kind of go in undercover as Araldo and pretend to be this world's second greatest detective investigating and trying to figure out who Elle is as they're kind of inside into the group. We also have a small scene here where Light kind of theorizes and wonders if he would have the fortitude to use this kind of power where he could kill people with just knowing their name and their face. So it's interesting, again, continuing with the kind of the new norm of him not remembering that he had a death note. He says no, he wouldn't be able to do it. He thinks there are people in the world who deserve to die, but he wouldn't have the stomach to do it, basically. So it's like, no, we've watched you do it for 15 episodes, so yeah, we know you're full of shit now, kid. It'll be interesting to see if like all these memories start flooding back to Light or something in the remainder of the series. One last thing from these episodes that I wanted to point out, and this will be basically for Christian if he's watching, who's the one who turned me on to the series in the first place. I love that the Yotsuba like cabal of people reminds me of like the Turks from Final Fantasy VII, or the first actual thing I thought about was Organization 13 from the Kingdom Hearts series. I definitely like see that, like, because they've all got their very distinct looks about them, and one of them kind of looks like Axel, and like another one kind of looks like Rude from the Turks, and so yeah, they all kind of have like, I think, stereotypical stock like Japanese mob bad guy thing going for them, and so yeah, it's just a cute little nod that I see when I watch the series now. So those are my thoughts on these episodes of Death Note. Like I said earlier, I'm over halfway through the series now, so there's not as much left for me as there has been before. I think I'm going to keep doing this 3 episodes per video kind of pace to get through it a little quicker, and then I can move on to something else. But I'm really enjoying the series. I think that this whole weird thing of like resetting Light's character and us getting to see Light without the influence of the Death Note is a really interesting approach, especially if like I think about how this whole thing was pitched to me as like, oh, it's like Breaking Bad. It would be very interesting to think of Breaking Bad where, you know, halfway through the series Walt just completely forgets how to be Heisenberg or something like that. So it's interesting. It's an interesting new dynamic that I definitely was not expecting the series to go in. So those are my thoughts on these episodes of Death Note. Let me know about what you think about the series in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.